Amber Hawes, and I'm the Senior Communications and Marketing Lead at Essential Skills Ontario. So before we get started, I just wanted to give you a few instructions. At the right-hand side of your screen is your GoToWebinar dashboard. Chris, if you just want to flip the slide. There you can chat with each other in the chat pane and ask questions. And if it's a technical question, I will try my best to assist you. If you have any questions about the content, feel free to ask them in the chat pane, and I'll ask Chris throughout the webinar as well as at the Q&A at the end. So just to give you a little brief introduction to Chris, as a program developer, Chris is working to implement various Essential Skills Ontario's projects. Previously, Chris worked as an Essential Skills consultant at Douglas College as an employment counselor at the Vancouver YWCA. He has a master's degree in public administration from Quinte and a Bachelor of Arts from Concordia. So you're probably sick about hearing from me right now. So Chris, I'm going to pass it over to you.
Thank you, Amber. As Amber said, I'm the program developer here. So for the last few months, I've been tasked with running around Ontario, trying to take Elevate from an idea to a real-life training program. It's been a lot of fun so far. So just to give you a brief overview of what we're going to do today, we've got an hour. We've done the welcome and introduction. I'll provide a update on the project, talk a little bit about the participants, a couple other key pieces of the project. Then we've got our community partner, Chuck O'Malley from Loyalist College, who will speak, and then we'll have questions. And if you have questions, just I think you write them in the box to the right, and Amber will sort of facilitate that as we go. So, and then hopefully we'll get you back to work by 2 p.m. So first of all, I'd just like to thank our funder, the Government of Canada, the Office of Literacy and Essential Skills. They've been very generous with funding this project and allowing us to test our idea, and they've been really good to work with so far. So thank you very much to the federal government. So just to give you a project update, this project is to go to the very beginning. The project is based on a training model developed in Washington State called the IBEST model, and it was very successful in Washington and has since spread across numerous other states. And what it does is it integrates literacy and basic skills into technical training needed to gain employment. So students get sort of everything they need to find a job and maintain a job in one sort of integrated program. So what our goal was to try and take this this idea of IBEST and bring it to Canada and see how it would work in the Canadian context. And so there's really 4 components to the Elevate project. The first is industry research through what we called an enhanced job requirement approach. We really tried to get an intimate understanding of what entry-level employees are expected to do in the food processing sector, and what skills they need to do those things or tasks. We're focusing exclusively on the food processing sector right now. We've found that there's a lot of demand in the sector and a real need for employees. So, secondly, we wanted to develop an integrated curriculum that uses the necessary mix of vocational skills, soft skills, industry exposure, and essential skills. And one of the keys you'll see as I go through the presentation is that industry exposure piece. It was really important to get people, sort of give them an avenue to see what the job would be like, what the work environment would be like before they actually started the job. So what we're doing is we're doing 10 demonstration sites across Ontario to put the idea into practice and see how it works. So far, as I'll get into later in my presentation, it's worked pretty well, but yeah, we're still out there in the field gathering results and gathering data and testing it out. So we'll hopefully by the end of it we'll have a pretty comprehensive understanding of how this sort of integrated training model works in Canada. And part of that understanding will be informed by the rigorous evaluation project, or the rigorous evaluation that model that we've used. This is OLIS, the Office of Literacy and Essential Skills, funded us to do a research project, and so we've done a number of things to ensure that we're gathering lots of data and tracking all of our both qualitative and quantitative outcomes of the project. And, sorry, the slides are a little slow. So before I get into the project, I wanted to just talk about the job requirements approach. This is what we use to really get an understanding of the work environment. So what we did is we combined elements of occupational research done through ONET in the United States. The U.S. Department of Labor runs a website called ONET that has lots of different information about the jobs and industries in the United States. The Skills and Employment Survey in the UK, and then the research done in conjunction with the PIAC survey about different occupations and the skills needed for different occupations. So we did a lot of research into these different methods and came up with what we called an enhanced JRA approach. And what that process turned out to be was that myself and two other colleagues generally would we ended up visiting 4 food processing facilities, and we'd conduct interviews with a selection of key managers and also frontline employees. The interviews with each employee would last about 15 or 20 minutes, and they'd really focus on what skills they needed to complete the tasks for their job, and then secondly, how that individual had developed those skills, whether it was something they'd gotten prior to joining the firm they were working with, or something where they were trained on the job, and also what softer skills they needed. So like if it was attitudinal or dexterity or any of these things, so what was needed to really be successful in the job and maintain employment in the food processing sector. We then spent a couple of hours on the plant floor observing workers while they worked, and really tried to key in on exactly what they were trying to do, or what tasks they had to do. So this, as you can imagine, this led to a pretty comprehensive understanding of entry-level positions that we were focusing on in Elevate. And just a little information about the 4 factories we visited. They represented the following subsectors within the food processing industry. We did one that was a candy confectionery facility, one that did meat butchering, another processed and froze vegetables, and then the final one grew, harvested, and then packaged mushrooms, all in the same facility. So with our research in the JRA in hand, we then went about developing a curriculum. And what we found from the JRA was that the curriculum needed to cover sort of 3 things. The soft and employability skills, which were really important. Things like, showing up to work every day, personal responsibility, working with others, different things like that were really critical. Employers really put a lot of emphasis on those. Then we wanted to include some industry-specific skills that people needed. So this could be anything from WMIS to the proper technique to use a knife or whatnot if you're cutting up meat, and other things like dexterity. And then finally, we wanted to look at essential skills. And with essential skills, we didn't find, there wasn't a lot of sort of the traditional three, reading, document use, and numeracy, but there was lots of problem solving, lots of working with others, and so that's where we really tried to focus the curriculum. We partnered with Loyalist College to develop the curriculum because of their extensive experience working with in the food processing sector, along with the manufacturing sector in the Quinte and Belleville region. And armed with the research we'd done and the expertise Loyalist brought to the table, we developed a 6-week curriculum with a large work placement component to it. And before I go over the curriculum in greater detail, if my slide will change, one of the things that we looked at, one of the things the JRAs covered was how firms in the food processing sector were training employees. And what we discovered was that an increasingly number of employers in Ontario are using a computer-based training program called Alchemy Systems. Alchemy Systems is based out of Austin, Texas, and they do work. My slide's not changing. Sorry. There we go. They do work all over the world in the food processing sector. And what it is a computer-based training system that provides as different units that are all about 10 to 20 minutes long, different presentations. They act out skits and what, and a wider range of topics are covered, including life skills, food safety, workplace safety, sort of food-specific, food processing-specific things, all sorts of things. And then students interact with the system through the use of remote controls to answer multiple choice questions, quizzes, and games. And it's quite a bit of fun, and both the instructor and the participants have really enjoyed using it. And I think it's worked well, and just because it has sort of standardized parts of our training with the industry norms, and also when we go and reach out to employers, they recognize the brand. Whether or not they use it themselves, they recognize the Alchemy brand, and that, I think, gives them some comfort that we know what we're talking about. Or at least we, yeah. So, there we go. Now my slide's changing. So this is just the curriculum schedule. This is the first 3 weeks, and what we did is it's 6 weeks in length in total, and the first 3 weeks are largely in the classroom. So you can see all the boxes. This is broken up by day of the week and also by morning and afternoon. And all the boxes that are white are more units that are taught in the classroom, and then all the boxes that are sort of that orange color are where students go on to the factory floor. So what we tried to do is use the first 3 weeks to really get people up to speed in the industry with various different things, whether it was just working in a team environment or good manufacturing practices, all sorts of things, WMIS, ergonomics. Get them ready for the workplace. Give them a couple tours so they got a taste of what they were getting into, and then send them on, give them a 2-week placement, which I will, you can see in the next slide, the next 3 weeks. Give them a 2-week placement, and then a final week to bring them back in the classroom. And the reason we put so much emphasis on getting people into the factory is that what we found when we spoke with employers is that they had a lot of trouble with employee retention. And largely what both they and us came to realize, I think, is that a big piece of it was getting ready for the environment of the food processing firms. It's not a pleasant environment. It can be hot, or it can be cold if you're freezing vegetables or other sort of frozen foods. You can be killing pigs, or chopping up. It can be, there's blood and guts everywhere. yeah, you're on your feet all day, you're moving things, it can be quite physically demanding. And so what employers are finding is that people who they hired just weren't ready. They weren't ready to start the job. Just they didn't know what they were getting into, and then they didn't have the capacity to sort of keep going. And so that's what we try to do by placing so much emphasis on the placement piece. And as you can see, it's all modularized. So each time we start a cohort, we try and work with the employers to figure out exactly what it is they need. We go over this document with them and see if they need maybe more WMIS or less HACCP or more, whatever it is. And then we also sort of work with them to figure out how the tours will work and whatnot to really try and tailor it to their needs so that the participants are ready, the students are ready to start work at the end of the program. So, for instance, one example is that we were working with a pork producer in Breslau, and they actually killed and slaughtered the pigs, and so they had a big problem with retention because these pigs get killed, then they get cleaned and stripped of all their guts and whatnot. So it's going to be if you're not ready for it. I mean, I'm still eating pork, but I'm not sure I would work there. But if you're not ready for it, it can be kind of shocking. So what we did is we moved the tour up to the very first day to sort of shock and awe the participants, so they knew exactly what they were getting into, and then we could go from there. And they had no illusions about where they were going to work. So now I'll give you a quick overview of the program participants. The goal of this, sorry, there's a bit delay with the slide. So the goal of this program is really to try and help people who are out of work and out of the labor force get back in. So largely, thus far, our participants have been on some sort of form of social assistance. We look for people who are long-term unemployed, have left 2 or more jobs in the last year, or haven't been employed more than 6 months over the last year. And we want those who ordinarily would not easily attach to the labor market. And we look for people also who are low-skilled. Maybe they didn't complete high school, or if they did, maybe they did a couple courses in college, but they didn't complete college. We're really not trying to fill these jobs with people who have the skills to do other things. We're trying to take people who are on some form of social assistance and provide an environment where they can find and secure sustainable employment. And so far it's been working well. A lot of the employers tell us that they would not look at this sort of pool of candidates had it not been for our program. So that's very encouraging. And then in the course of our project, obviously it's a research project, so we do a lot of poking and prodding to try and figure out exactly how it's working for the participants, and not just the participants, but also the instructor and also the employer. So we're really trying to focus on learning from what we're doing, and also determine whether or not it works. These goals have led to sort of a comprehensive evaluation that occurs throughout the program. We have a data analyst on staff who is analyzing data, along with 2 independent evaluators who are using both qualitative and quantitative methods to assess the program. And they go in and do extensive interviews with the participants, the instructors, and also the employers, to really try and get a full sense of how it's working. And then we've been using the college, essential skills assessment developed by the College Sector Council. I think Sandy Hennessy is on the call right now. So hello, Sandy Hennessy. Thank you for all your help. So that's been really good to provide us with a insight into where participants are in terms of their reading, document use, and numeracy skills. We've also built an independent database to better track and analyze participant data. It's built largely off of the CAMS EOIS system here in Ontario. It's the same, basically the same fields. It's just we needed access to the data to be able to run our reports and whatnot. So I think that's been working out well. And we're hoping in the end to conduct a quasi-experimental control study to be able to compare the success or failure, or how our project is working with that of other projects or similar programs in Ontario. So we're still working on getting the data set for the control group in the quasi-experimental control study, but hopefully we'll have it in the end. And we've also developed tools to measure things like attitudes towards learning, future orientation, and grit. Sort of the grit people have to stay on the job, sort of the motivation to stick with something based on similar workforce projects and studies. And so the goal is at the end to really be able to have a clear picture of how beneficial the program was. So I think we're on our way, but we'll see. Now I will talk about if the slide changes. There we go. Now I'll talk about the demonstration sites. So as I mentioned earlier, we are doing 10 sites across Ontario. There's a variety of different subsectors in the food processing industry who've been involved. So far, we've completed 2 cohorts. We have 2 in progress as we speak, and 5 more scheduled. So that leaves us 1 more to do, which we'll figure out. And we've had pretty good success working with employers. So far we've been in contact, working with 21 different employers at sort of varying levels of engagement. And we've had really encouraging results and feedback from all our demonstration sites, and lots of learnings. Where we are running cohorts currently, or have run them, both the employers and the community really want to keep going. But Chuck can speak to this in a minute, but apparently in Belleville, an employer who wasn't involved in the program is now starting to poach, or try to poach, graduates. So that's encouraging. So maybe we'll be able to run a future cohort with them. I did up a little map to show, sort of demonstrate where all our cohorts are. So you can see we've got Strathroy, Belleville, Stratford, Toronto, Woodstock, and Oshawa. Our Woodstock cohort starts on the 7th of February, and Toronto and Oshawa will be coming later on in the month. And then we're currently running in Stratford and Belleville, and we did one in Strathroy, and then another one in Belleville in the fall. One thing I wanted to touch on briefly before I hand it over to Chuck is just what we've learned and how it's been going so far. I think for the most part it's going quite well. We don't have any hard numbers at this point, but I would say about 80 to 90% of the people who we've trained or have successfully gone through the program are employed at the end. That's sort of a back of the envelope calculation, but so employers are really happy with it, and oftentimes, I think in all cohorts, we've had employers who have wanted to hire people immediately out of the classroom, and we've had to, so they haven't wanted to have these participants complete the training. So that's good, because these are people that, as I mentioned, they wouldn't wouldn't look at these people beforehand had they not got into the training. It's a sort of untapped pool of labor for them. So that's really encouraging. Some of the learnings or the challenges we've had is recruitment has been a big issue, and two things like recruitment and transportation have been big issues. Have you seen, as you've seen in the map before, some of the communities are quite small. Strathroy is very small. Breslau, where we were trying to run a cohort, but we ended up not being able to just because we couldn't get enough people there. Some of these more rural locations, transportation is a big issue. These just happen to be where the food processor is located, so that's a challenge. What we found is that where we run programs sort of again, so the first cohort is always very difficult, but the second cohort, once we get the second cohort going, then we've sort of built momentum in the community, and people know what the program's about, what it's trying to do. The employers are more engaged. Everybody sort of starts to come around, which I think is only natural. The different service agencies have more trust. They're more open to referring their candidates to the program. So that's really a big learning, is that where you can run it again and again, multiple times, it's a good thing. And yeah, and the other thing too is the choice of partners. What we've been doing is going to different communities and hiring community service agencies to deliver the training. Now that we've developed this curriculum and all the assessments and everything, we sort of package it up and give it to a partner organization. And where the community agency is able and willing, where there's motivation to really run with it, it does really well. Where they're maybe not as interested or not as engaged with the project, then it struggles a bit. So that's one of the things we've learned. But with that, I think I will hand it over to probably the most willing and engaged, able of our partners, Chuck O'Malley from the Loyalist Training and Knowledge Center. And yeah, Chuck can speak a bit about his experiences in Belleville.
Thanks, Chris. Hope everybody can hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you, Chuck.
Great. Well, I think, Chris, you've nailed a lot of the key elements. From our perspective, I'd like to talk about three things. Number one would be the partnership element. Number two, the transformative and the confidence-building nature from the participants. And three, really the employer's perspective. It's a new pipeline for them. Okay, as you can see, can everybody see this picture? This is a grad of our first cohort that finished there in December. You will wonder why the police are there. We actually used their building in the city of Quinte West. It was, a good day for the participants because we had the college president, we had all of our stakeholders there, community referral agencies, we had mayors and aldermen, all involved in this. One of the key elements that I've observed personally is from the start of a class to the end of the program is that the confidence levels of individuals, and some it was really transformative from them, being able to show up every day, learn new things, and get employment, and that's really their number one objective going into the program. The employers, they're the essential ingredient, but we do have, a solution for them, because what they've told us is as they hire new people, there's a sort of a turnover rate that's very excessive, And this has really stemmed the tide. And it gives them timely access to well-trained people. We have a placement on as we speak this week and next. And right after that, they'll come back to us for our last week. And, you know, our earlier kind of feedback is that they'll all have employment. And we have a full class of 16 people. So that's pretty amazing. We do have another cohort planned for March 23rd. And we've already started interviewing and getting referrals from our partners. Chris, one of the other things that I, kind of want to bring to the group's attention is that this does work. I guess it's quite simple. It does work from a community perspective, from workforce development, economic development perspective, and it works for the individuals because it's a win-win-win partnership. Maybe I could, to get some feedback, I could turn it over to Amber to maybe get some questions, and that way I can direct any, answers towards what people want to hear.
That's good, Chuck. Is there any questions, Amber?
Yeah, I have a few questions. The first question I have is, what are the entry-level education or qualifications for this program?
I think I touched on that, but we lower level, high school or less largely, or maybe they've graduated from high school with a few courses somewhere, but it hasn't really led to success in the job market. So lower skilled candidates.
Yeah, and we've taken others that are, have barriers to employment. And that could be from a social economics standpoint. I think one of the key criteria is regardless of education level is do they want to change and work? And if they do, we'll get them into the program.
Okay, perfect. So I have another question. So how has training retention been, and are many leaving after the initial tour?
From my perspective, that's why we positioned the first week tour up front, and we really haven't had any turnover at that point. We have had turnover after the placement portion, not a lot, but a couple that have tried it, and it just wasn't their cup of tea. Secondly, that's why we're looking at new employer partners to expand that, because we currently have 2 meat plant processing plants, and some may want a little more variety. So there hasn't been any with respect to the tour.
Yeah, no, we had in our very first cohort in Stratford, we had two people who, due to our inexperience, we shouldn't have let in to the program. They had sort of more severe mental health issues and just issues in general, and weren't ready for the labor market. So they left. The employer asked them to leave. They just weren't. It wasn't safe for them to be on the plant floor during the placement. So we had to sort of let them go, which was unfortunate. But that was due to our inexperience in that first cohort. And I don't think we've had much turnover in after the tours.
No.
Okay, perfect. So I have another question. How are the partner service agencies chosen? Is there a formal process?
Yep, there's been an RFP process. We did an RFP in the when was it? Quite a while ago now, and that's been one of the more challenging pieces, is trying to get service agencies where the employers are. So it's been a bit of a sort of a negotiation to find out which employers are interested and willing to participate, and then find a suitable partner as a community service agency.
Perfect. And another question, how long will you be tracking the cohort?
We're hoping for 6 months.
Okay,
So
perfect.
6 months after they finish the training.
All right, and do you anticipate public or private funding for ongoing delivery after the demonstration project is complete, and when does the project finish?
The training component of the project finishes March 31st. We're exploring other avenues for funding right now, but at this point the training will finish March 31st, and then the project itself wraps up, I think, May 7th, early May. But we haven't secured anything yet right now.
I know from our perspective in the greater Quinte region, there's been a tremendous support to, make this sustainable, because it does fulfilling a need here. So any help that we can give Chris and his organization, we're working together on this.
Perfect. Do you want me to continue on with questions? Because I'm getting a lot of them right now, so we can just make this more of a Q&A session.
Yeah, sure. Why don't we do that, Amber? That sounds good.
All right, sounds good. So is there a threshold for reading and writing skills for this?
No.
No.
No,
Right.
we've had, we've done the assessments, the EASY assessment it's called, I think, the College Sector Committee's assessment with everybody, and we've found that really we've had people at all levels, everywhere from, well, we had one lady in the first cohort who couldn't read. She couldn't do the assessment by herself without somebody reading it to her, and then a lot of the curriculum had to be adapted to be more oral for her. She had severe dyslexia, so she obviously had issues, literacy issues. But then we've also had other people who scored very well, sort of 375 or high 3s and 4s on the assessment. And from talking to employers, it really hasn't made a difference in terms of their ability or effectiveness on the job.
Okay, perfect. Is there a minimum hiring requirement for employers to participate?
No, we look for employers who have openings or who are in need of an employee, and it really depends on the size of the firm and whatnot. Sometimes we have enough to work with a single employer in the community. Other times we have to sort of get a group, a couple employers, so that not only do they have space for placements for the 2-week placement, but also that there will be jobs for participants at the end of the program.
Okay, perfect. Do you see this model being applied to other subsectors?
Well, I think it could certainly work in other subsectors in the food industry. I think, maybe Chuck, you can speak more to this, but I think there are definitely, the curriculum has been designed in a way where it could easily be transferred to other, I think, sectors in manufacturing and places where they have a need for this sort of low-skilled labor.
Yeah, I agree. In terms of the transferable, we've already been asked too by other. Are you launching sort of related sectors like plastics and supply chains and packaging and so forth, easily transferable? We just have to modify some of the food-specific things that are in the program. It wouldn't be a major overhaul for sure.
Okay. When does the Toronto cohort start, and who are the partners, employers, and community?
We're working with, who are we working with? We're working with Partners to Employment, Toronto, and they should be starting later this month, middle of February, I think. And the employers haven't been. I don't know the employers yet. We're still doing outreach to the employers.
Okay. Chris, you said that employers wanted to hire learners even before work placement. How could they be sure that these learners would do the job without observing them in the work placement?
Sorry, Amber, can you repeat that again?
Yeah. You said that employers wanted to hire learners even before work placement. So how could they be sure that these learners would do the job without observing them in the placement?
Well, I think that speaks to just the demand in the sector. Chuck can maybe touch on this in greater detail, but I know there's been a couple now. It's not just a single one where just from the tour, people have employers have tried to hire participants.
I think, yeah, it's all been driven by their customers. So when they're busy, they need people, and so the timing was good for them. That said, they still have to do the criteria in terms of making sure they show up and they complete the program. And the employers have been involved in the design of it, so they know what these people are getting. And when we started our placement this week, we had nothing but praise for those candidates that are now employed. They met us and they helped with the tours, and they said, when's the next group graduating? So it really set that foundation for future success.
Okay. Another question. So in our county, we do not have food processing plants, but we do have many restaurants in need of wait staff and cooks. Do you think we would be able to use this model?
I think the model would be could be applicable. There has been some confusion about the difference between food processing and food handling, so we've had to be careful about that to make sure everybody's on the same page in terms of what exactly we're looking for. But yeah, I think if you want to do some research with employers to see exactly what sort of skills are needed. I think there was another OLIS-funded project called Upskill that worked more with food handling, run by SRDC. So it might be interesting. If you're interested, it might be worth contacting them as well.
Okay, perfect. Do you use employment service agencies to recruit training participants?
Yes. Yeah, we try and make it a real sort of community effort. So Ontario Works, Employment Ontario, anybody and everybody who may have willing and able participants, we try and reach out to.
Yeah. From our perspective, every provincially funded employment agency, we did group sessions, individual one-on-ones. Ontario Works were a big partner. They did group sessions right on site. We also reached out to other community partners, the youth agencies. Police also referred folks. The referral sources came from a variety of sources.
Okay. Chris, you mentioned that recruitment was difficult at first. What can be done in the future to make employment counselors more comfortable referring clients?
That's a good question. I think the first couple we did, they were our very first cohorts, so we were sort of going by the seat of our pants and didn't always have the best idea of what we were trying to do or how the program was going to work. So now that we've done a few, we know how it works and how it should work and what works well and whatnot. Now it's a little easier, but I think it took a couple just to sort of work out the kinks from our end and then be able to present that in a sort of coherent manner to the employment agencies, and they've been very supportive, but it does take a little time, especially when you're going into a community where we don't have a presence. So that's been one of the key learnings, I'd say, also, is that working with partners who have strong and deep and engaged ties to the community has been absolutely critical.
One of the other sources we used was through our economic development partners. They have semi-annually career fairs with representing all the employers, not just the food sector, but we participated in that. And as a matter of fact, some of the employers would refer them down to us so they could get into the program, so they could get the graduates at the other end. So, yeah, it takes a lot of outreach and coordination, but it pays off.
Okay, perfect. Another question here. How did you get to a skills-based curriculum approach rather than a content-based curriculum approach?
It's a good question. Chuck, do you want to answer that?
Just repeat that for me.
Sure. How did you get to a skills-based curriculum approach rather than a content-based curriculum approach?
Good question. From the skills perspective, is we have a constant contact with the employers. It's a experiential component to everything we do in this. Highly experiential. A lot of activities, a lot of reflection. There is learning journals. So there is deep in content, but the skills are reflective of what the employers want. And in our case, we also did a comprehensive local labor market study, and they had indicated some of the softer skills that they were seeing lacking in a community, and so we tried to build those into the model.
Yeah, I'm unfamiliar with the difference between like a skills-based curriculum versus a content-based curriculum, but I'd second Chuck is that the curriculum really just came from the research that was done. Just looking at what employers needed and what employees needed to be able to successfully get and sustain jobs.
Yeah. And we've been doing this for over 35 years in terms of employment-related programs and corporate learning. So we kind of blended that when we designed the curriculum and made sure that it was reflective of what the employers want.
Okay. Are there post-hire supports available to those hired?
Yep, that's part of what we hire the community service agencies to do, is provide sort of follow-up on generally a case-by-case basis, because I think some people need it more than others, and people need it at varying levels. So Chuck can speak more to what they're doing in the Belleville area.
Yeah, we kind of reached out to our providers if there's sort of more in-depth wraparound services needed, and sometimes that's, it's beyond what we have. After they get employed, they may, be struggling with something they need in the community, and we'll link them. We just had that situation recently. We're in constant touch with the employer, so they do provide us feedback and how things going. Our coordinator of the one of the instructors has been a good relationship with the people themselves, and we have a cell number and a text number that they contact just to let us know how things are going, and we reach out to them too. So, but the wraparound services are essential to make sure those partners are there to help as in case things fall off the rails.
All right, and what is the optimal size of a participant group?
That was one of our big learnings, is that I think in our initial proposal we suggested 25, which I think we found to be far too many. Chuck, I don't know, you can talk, but I think probably around 10 to 15 is good. Yeah. Especially for the sort of group that the issues, the challenges that come with a group like this.
Yeah, Chris, I think that's one of our challenges, is because you have some folks with some barriers, and some require more attention than others. So they also is balancing the placement portion. So when you have an employer, if you had 20, they may not be able to handle, say, a whole class. In our case, we were fortunate to have 2, and one of the employers had a sort of a different set of criteria. They insisted on grade 12, and no criminal records. So that kind of reduced their pipeline a bit. So we had to balance that. So my recommendation, just based on experience, would be that sort of 10 to 15 or 16 at the very most, just because of that those challenges of placement and the support and group activity as well as the individual attention.
Sounds good. So another question, will you be sharing the full curriculum?
Yeah, that's our plan. We're hoping to make it sort of as open and as available as possible once the project completes.
All right, sounds good. Are the employers utilizing wage subsidies that may be available to them?
Some of them are. Chuck, maybe you can speak more to this in Belleville, but we are trying to sort of use all of the resources available in the community to get these people employed. So, but it's really been a sort of a case-by-case basis on a community level at that point.
In our case, yeah, because one of the employment agencies also administered that, and they supported the employer afterwards. They met them at the graduation and said, by the way, this is available, but that wasn't a sort of a necessity for hiring. But if it's there, yeah, they can use it.
Okay, so you'd mentioned that working with others and problem solving are some of the more important essential skills for these jobs. Are you measuring participant skills gains in these areas, and are you noticing improvements after training?
We're definitely trying to measure skill gain. So we're doing pre and post assessments for the reading, document use, and numeracy. Sort of where skills can be quantified. We're doing pre and post assessments. It's difficult to sort of quantify working with others and problem solving, but there are check-ins throughout the curriculum to show progress and whatnot, and then just the sort of eye test as well. And Chuck can speak to this more, but I think we're definitely seeing growth on both those problem solving and working with others from the start when somebody enters to the end.
It's built in just about in every activity we do, and so there is personal growth and, like I said before, even transformation to these individuals. One of the built-in, I guess, systems that Chris talked about from Alchemy is the use of quizzes and testing. It isolates folks that are not participating and or get a wrong answer, so that we can, kind of take a deeper dive and to feel if they're not progressing. Also, the use of our Passport for Success. Really, it's a learning journal to reflects back on all the objectives, all the daily activities, and so they do that at the end of each day. So we know where there's any gaps, and so that we may have to recover things. For the most part, once they get used to doing that reflective exercise, whether it's individual reflection or group or team reflection, they really kind of come right out and say whether they don't get it. And the other things we use is we've integrated some of the kind of manufacturing principles that are, like housekeeping and 5S and lean concepts right into the classroom. So when they hit the floor, they're kind of experienced in those, those content.
Okay, so I have a few more questions. Do you have any estimates yet to show the return on training investment to help gain employer buy-in for this kind of training?
No, we haven't done our ROI calculations yet. That will come at the end. But just in terms of employer buy-in, I don't know if we could say that they've certainly seen value in the program. What sort of dollar figure they would put on it, I don't know.
Okay.
The ROI from my perspective is, the reduction in OW payments, their contributions to taxes, everything. There will be a very high ROI on those that are graduating and finishing the program.
Okay, so I just have two more questions here, and then we'll wrap it up for today. So when developing the curriculum, did you base any of the content from national occupation standards or skill standards for the food manufacturing industry?
We looked at those when we first started our research, but we didn't find they provided a sort of full and coherent picture of exactly what food processes needed. So most of the curriculum was based off of either the experience that Chuck's had through the years at Belleville, or our JRA work with individual employers.
Yeah, it was a combination of the JRA. We've observed many food processing plants. Loyalist developed the first food and beverage process operator, registered Ontario apprentice in Canada. We developed that some 8 years ago now. So to do that, we had to do extensive research in terms of what food companies wanted. So I also blended that in there.
Okay, and last question for the day. To what degree do you find from participants how much they use what they learned?
Chuck can speak to this better than I can. He has more content.
I would say every single day. From the team element, interacting with others, to their food safety and security content items. Matter of fact, they tell us, the employers and the employees, that they're far better trained than the employees they're working with. So not only do they use it, I think it's helping them get noticed and, in some cases, some internal advancement.
Okay. Do you guys have anything else to add before we end for the day?
I don't think so. Thank you, everybody, for participating. I'll post my contact information just in a minute.
And you can post mine too, Chris, if there's any questions from a delivery standpoint or a community standpoint. I'd be more than happy to answer questions.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Yeah, so
and I
if
will
anybody has any more questions or wants more details, feel free to get in touch, and I can direct you in the right direction.
Sounds good. I'll also be sending up a follow-up email, and if technology has not failed us, this webinar will be recorded and will be housed on ESO's website. So stay tuned for a follow-up email, and thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.